Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for those who have been able to join. My name is Innocent Magambi, and I'm the CEO of Advocacy. Thank you so much for subscribing to this conversation where we'll be talking about human trafficking that has been really dominating conversations in Malawi and in South Africa, but also in Ethiopia. And so today I'll be joined by an incredible panel of experts from South Africa and from Malawi. We'll be discussing this conversation. And I'm here as your host, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, but also to ask any questions or comment if you can, because this is an interactive conversation and we'll be able to give an opportunity for our panelists to be able to answer any questions, but also we'll recognize your questions, but also your comment. And as I said, my name is Innocent Magambi. The conversation that we'll be having today is really, really dear to my heart because of the time that I've spent documenting and following up, but also exposing the issues affecting human trafficking that has been there for many years in the refugee camp. So we'll be discussing this, and for 1 hour, go into our social media, but also in our YouTube, and be able to see the documentary that our friends made, which is quite long and very detailed. Now, in terms of panelists, we have Kajal, who is the director of the African program at the International Commission of Jurists. She's based in South Africa, and she's bringing 20 years of experience in the human rights sector. She previously led the Southern Africa Litigation Center and managed the Refugee and Migrant Rights Program at Lawyers for Human Rights. We are honored to have someone with such a deep expertise in asylum, refugees, protection, migration, citizenship, statelessness, and human rights. We also have Peter Chisi, who is, for the past 11 years and counting, Peter has been the Director of Civil and Political Rights at the Malawi Human Rights Commission. He oversees initiatives that promote and protect civil and political rights. With over 2 decades of experience in human rights, Peter has contributed significantly in the areas of good governance, access to justice, alternative dispute resolution, election observation, sexual minority rights, and refugee protection. Last but not least is Gordon Matonga, who is an award-winning Malawian investigative journalist and the director of investigations at the Platform for Investigative Journalism in Malawi. He also chairs the Malawi chapter of the Media Institute of Southern Africa, and is a member of International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. And he has contributed quite to a lot of high-profile documents and papers. His work is focused on corruption, governance, and human rights. So, without wasting much of the time, let's go into the questions. And so I would ask our panelists to put their videos on and be ready for the conversations. So we'll start with Gordon. Gordon, early this year, your organization published the first of its kind detailed report and documentary on the human trafficking syndicate, made up predominantly of Ethiopian nationals who for years have been using Dzaleka Refugee Camp in Malawi as a base for their inhumane trade. For those who have seen the documentary or the report or both, could you kindly share the process behind investigating such stories, but also how you end up deciding what piece should be produced into a report? And so, for those who have seen, can you please explain? But also for those who haven't yet seen the documentary or have not read the report, can you briefly give them the highlights of what you find?
Pleasure to meet everyone who has joined us on the call. As Innocent Ladre introduced me, I'm an investigative journalist. I am based here in the Malawi's capital, Lilongwe. I work with a platform for investigative journalism, which is a non-profit center for investigative journalism. We established PIJ in 2020, primarily to focus on public interest journalism, accountability journalism, that would be able to base its reporting on the groundbreaking investigation. So we decided to do this investigation on human trafficking because it's one of those issues that we have been hearing for a number of years, but we never had a finger on exactly what was going on. We had several journalists in our team that we are talking about the same thing. We are talking to a number of sources. We are telling them about this human trafficking syndicate, but we didn't know who were the players. So we decided as a team that we needed to go deep into an investigation and try to find out what is really going on. A couple of years ago, there was this mass grave that was discovered in the northern part of Malawi, where bodies of over 20 Ethiopian nationals we are found, and that moment was a shocking moment for everyone in Malawi, because for the first time, people had to come to meet the reality of what had been going on for a number of years, but suddenly it had came into public reckoning because of this shocking event. Since that moment, we have been trying to know what really goes on for the migrants to be smuggled into the country and out of the country. And for a long time, the rumors indicated that they were receiving a lot of support. The traffickers were receiving a lot of support from public officials, from the immigration to police. And later on, that's when we even heard that even the military was deeply involved in the supporting these smugglers, people smugglers. Then we started hearing reports of politicians as well being involved in this illegal business. So we got invested and decided that we should put up a team to investigate this incident. Normally, as you would do in the journalism, we did some research on the subject, then started doing the investigation. And I'm happy to speak a little bit more later on about what we discovered. But in a nutshell, I think what we uncovered in the end was a syndicate that was being supported by powerful individuals in government, in the military, a murderous syndicate that would kill those that had paid it to be smuggled when it became necessary. We found a chain of documents that indicated, that confirmed money transactions between various public officers and the syndicate. We found phone records and other evidence that confirmed beyond doubt the involvement of senior police officers, immigration officers, and other officials of the state. So in the end, I think we were able to expose this syndicate. We were able to link some very big businesses in Malawi to the syndicate, and we were able to show the extensity of the wealth that these smugglers were able to accumulate while involving themselves in this illegal business.
Thank you so much, Gordon, for that explanation of the process, but also the major findings. I want to go to you, Peter. I believe you have both, seen the video, the documentary that Gordon is talking about, but also the report, which really is very, very well written and gives a lot of detail. And so the question to you is, what shocked you most, of the findings? Was there anything that was discovered that you hadn't known before the report from Gordon team? Over to you.
So that's very commendable. As Malawi Human Rights Commission, we find this report and the documentary very important and relevant to our work. To directly respond to your question in terms of what shocked us most or what shocked me most, I think for me, it's the question of the roles of different stakeholders involved in the syndicate. Particularly, all of us should be comfortable with the fact that our security agencies and institutions, in this regard, I would be talking about Malawi Police Services, the Department of Immigration, as well as the Malawi Defense Force. We would actually find solace that if these institutions are solid and working professionally, we should be able to address the problem of human trafficking, especially at Dzaleka. But with the fact that most of them, and not just junior officers, but senior officers as well, are involved in the syndicate and are part of the problem, that is very worrying. Because it's like we have nowhere to go. We would actually wish to trust these institutions to join forces, to join hands and deal with the problem. But if they are implicated and according to the documentary, they are actually part of the problem, then the question is, what can we do? Secondly, as MHRC, we have also been particularly interested in the role of the Malawi Defense Force in this issue, not only as accomplices in the matter, but also where the MDF has come in to make some raids and be directly involved in some arrests and deportations. It has been our position, and we are reaching out to the MDF. Our position has been that if suspects of human trafficking are arrested, we must give a chance to the due process of the law to take its course, not only for the sake of the respect of rule of law, but we think that in doing so would also be part of the problem in the sense that it would allow us to expose those involved, because evidence that can be shared in court can also help to expose who else is behind the syndicate. There have been times when, in fact, some deportations have taken place, if existing court orders not to do so. So it is for that reason that from the human rights perspective, we have requested for an audience with the leadership of the Defense Force so that we can reach out to them and engage them and also maybe hope for some adjustments in terms of how these things are done. Finally, I think the extent of the problem itself, we look back to a number of people that have died in the course of these issues of human trafficking, like the 30+ people that were found dead in Mzimba. Very, very shocking. Let me pause there. And once again, thanks to Gordon and the team for a job well done.
Thank you. Thank you. So, I mean, if I can just summarize shortly what you just said, that the shocking part was, the involvement of the very people who are supposed to stop this kind of activities. So, I mean, you kind of went to the other question that I'll ask you more about what has been done in the process, but that will come later, maybe after we hear from Kajo. Kajo, can you tell me, before the report and the documentary from Platform for Investigative Journalism, had you come across the story of human trafficking and how, Malawi and Dzaleka Refugee Camp has been, taken as their hub for this business? Like, did you hear anything before and after reading or, watching the video? What shocked you the most in the report?
Thank you, Innocent. For decades, South Africa has been the traditional destination country for migrants and refugees moving south, particularly because of its economic opportunities. Southern Africa is also used by migrants as a springboard for secondary migration to Europe, the US, Australia, and other places. However, with growing labor opportunities in the mining, manufacturing, agricultural sectors in other parts of the region, countries like Zambia, Malawi, Mozambique, and Botswana are increasingly being viewed as alternative destinations. This emerging dynamic means that higher numbers will leave the Horn of Africa than enter South Africa because some migrants will remain in countries along the southern route. Transit countries are more and more becoming destination countries. I have been aware of a defined migration route from the Horn of Africa to South and Southern Africa for a long time. That has been in use for what I recollect is more than 15 years. Persons using this route almost always use people smugglers to facilitate that journey. In more recent years, human trafficking has also started to emerge as a very serious concern along this route. I think we also need to be aware that there are two concepts and two issues that we're dealing with. One is human trafficking, and the other is human smuggling or people smuggling, which are both distinct crimes with different elements and different consequences. Trafficking involves exploitation and coercion, forcing individuals into situations like forced labor or sexual exploitation, while smuggling involves the illegal transportation of a person across borders, often with their consent, and the purpose of the smuggling is to evade immigration laws. Now, Innocent, you've asked me a question about what has shocked me, and I can honestly say to you, I've been working in the migration sector for more than 25 years, and nothing shocks me anymore. I mean, the documentary that was produced and the report that was produced is deeply concerning. A range of human rights violations, very serious concerns for both for Malawi, but also for neighboring countries. And something that needs to be dealt with very seriously. And it's very disappointing to see that the Malawi authorities, the government authorities, are not taking it as seriously as we would hope. And I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's when you say that, after 25 years of working in this sector, nothing shocks you. That's a voice of someone who has been disappointed so many times, and I believe by those who were supposed to make things right. And it's really shocking. Unfortunately, this is the world we're living in. Anyways, Gordon, let me just go back to you because the piece of work that you produced, both the documentary but also the report, it earned you and your team and your organization an award from MISA, which is truly impressive and praiseworthy work and recognition as well. But are you and your team satisfied by the results so far? Do you feel like so far you have met the ultimate objective of the work that you did?
No, we are not satisfied with the public reaction to the documentary. We are not even satisfied by the public officials' reaction to the documentary. It's, however, consistent with how the country reacts to most of the investigations that we have published. Maybe it's a sense of resignation, but there appears to be little effect sometimes on the officials when we do this work, which can be very frustrating for us as investigative journalists. We would love to see people getting arrested, people being fired from positions after such kind of work has been produced. But it's sad to see that sometimes there is almost indifference to the work that we are doing. People's life just sometimes go on as if nothing happened in terms of the decisions that we would love to see being done. But we also know at the same time that the more we expose these things, there is always some sort of impact. The officials become more cautious. So the frequency, for example, of the smuggling, you would expect that it has gone down. You would expect that because we have put so much light on the information, for example, like existence of secret prisons inside the refugee camp itself. Those places can no longer be used for that purpose because we have put it to public attention. So we do hope that there will be gradual impact by the documentary, but we would have loved if we had seen some more robust reaction from the state and other players. Even more disappointing is civil society. Investigative journalists can only do so much. We can only put these issues up to the public, but we cannot litigate in court. We cannot protest on the street. We are not supposed to do all the accountability work on ourselves. We also have to rely on colleagues in civil society to also take up some of this law. When government is being indifferent to these reports, what about civil society? What about someone bringing in strategic litigation to be able to force government to take some action? So that's also what is disappointing, that there is inadequate work by civil society to be able to support work that investigative journalists are doing around exposing corruption. But again, on this project, inadequate support from civil society. I should then put a caveat that we do really appreciate what UNOA has done, not only bringing this discussion, but even when we are doing the investigation itself, we had the support for UNOA, we had support from Youth and Society, which was unique and something which could be replicated in the future and could be transformative in terms of how civil society and the media can work. We were able to benefit from UNOA's experience and expertise in this area. We were able to tap into resources from Youth and Society for us to be able to do this kind of work. By the way, this was the first time as an institution we had ever produced a video documentary. We have a website where we publish most of our work. So for us, it was also a learning process, only doing something new. And from there, we believe we can be able to do such kind of documentaries and to add an extra layer of platform from the website that we have been publishing. And I think the documentary was even more effective in reaching out to more people than just the usual text that we publish on the website. So we enjoyed the support from UNOA and yes, but we do believe that civil society should be able to do more to work with journalists to be able to ensure that the investigations are more impactful and bring a lasting change to society.
Thank you so much for that insight. I mean, you are right that when issues like these, things that have been hidden are exposed, they may not be eradicated immediately, but at least there is a level of fear that the perpetrators have to kind of, start having. And I agree with that, because the current information that I have is that those houses that, you exposed, they are no longer used, and now they have changed the strategy, which we know where they are keeping people. It's just a matter of having serious, officials who are willing to finalize the work. And I also agree with what you said about the collaboration that is needed to be able to produce such high-level work. And the documentary, effectiveness of documentary, like we posted it on our on our YouTube, and within a week, there had been over 16,000 people who had viewed it. So it's, I believe, combining the text, but also video is also effective. And thank you so much. Peter, I don't know if you are still online, but my question to you is, as Malawi Human Rights Commission, what action have you taken so far in response to the report, and what further actions are pending? I know that you had alluded to some of the conversation that you have started, either planning or executed with the Malawi Defense Force, but can you tell us more? Over to you, Peter.
Thank you so much. So let me join Gordon in lamenting the fact that after all this work that they have exposed, there seems to be not much that has happened to support the work in terms of taking forward. So that is a very correct position. We really need to have a proper national agenda to address the issues of human trafficking and benefit from the report that has just been released. From our side as the MHRC, I would say that even before this report was released, of course, we have always been interested in these issues, particularly trying to understand the trade, who is involved, and so on and so forth. It's surprising that the Ethiopian community is a small community at Dzaleka, and yet it is the one that is mostly involved in these matters, and that both the traffickers and the victims tend to be Ethiopians. So it's something that we think it can be managed by proper follow-ups by authorities, Malawi Police Services, the Department of Immigration, and so on and so forth. One of the first activities that we did in line with our mandate was to engage with the Department of Immigration, because they have the overall mandate in terms of administration and management of the refugee camp. But when we did that, and I think that was in August last year, the response from them was that we needed to also engage other sectors, particularly the Department of Immigration and then the Malawi Defense Force, because already at that time we also raised the issues of the involvement of Malawi Defense Force in raiding Dzaleka Refugee Camp. Those are some of the steps that we have already done. In terms of direct engagement with MDF, yes, we already took a position by seeking an appointment. Unfortunately, I think since January, we have not been able to secure a date, but we have met them directly, and the Army Commander has indicated that we should be able to meet with them soon. So that will be done, and it's an opportunity for us to actually table the issues and also hear from them. Next month, we should be having this platform where we are going to have stakeholders from other countries, including Ethiopia, Uganda, Tanzania, Zambia, South Africa, all those who we think have a role to play. Because when these people find themselves in Malawi, they also pass through a number of countries, and we want to come up with a joint platform to say how best can we also assist to actually rectify the problem. Again, I think we should also be calling upon Malawi Police Service to up their game, because whether we like it or not, they have the central role to play in actually investigating all suspects and making sure that they are prosecuted. Let me leave it there, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter, for the insights, because sometimes when people don't get any communication or reaction from the Malawi Human Rights Commission, they easily assume that, they are not doing anything. So to hear that there are concrete steps that the Commission has taken and huge initiatives, not just to tackle the matter within the country, to mobilize the regional force, that is really, really impressive. That, it's information and news that everybody needs to hear, and we are willing to make sure that people understand and hear that, because it gives hope. And so, Kajao, for me, this is a question, but also a lament. And based on what Peter just said, when we were planning for this meeting and the conversation, our hope was to bring together the three human rights commissions, the Malawian Human Rights Commission, South Africa, and Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, to really talk about, to see, for people to hear what they have done, what they're doing, and what they're planning to do. But the Malawi Human Rights Commission was the first to respond, and today they are in a meeting and they're telling us great and amazing things that they are doing. But the South African and Ethiopian, they recognized our initial emails, and they went quiet. They never responded or committed to have this conversation. So anyway, they may have the reason, but until they tell us what they have done or their reason, we'll just assume that they avoided this conversation. However, I just want to know, if as an expert like you, who have had, all these experiences, but also have dealt with regional coordination, what can we do, or what is missing, in the fact that we haven't seen visibly a coalition of regional power working together to end. Why don't we see stronger regional collaboration on this issue? What's wrong? Over to you.
Thanks, Innocent. According to the UNHCR, at the end of December 2024, Malawi was hosting just over 56,000 people, forcibly displaced persons. And the majority of them are refugees and asylum seekers from the DRC, Burundi, Rwanda, Somalia, and Ethiopia. The UNHCR also acknowledged that Dzaleka became a hotspot for human trafficking, prompting security interventions to protect refugees from criminal networks. Mixed migration trends continue, and some refugees are moving onwards in search of better opportunities, moving onwards from Malawi and from Dzaleka. It may be helpful to seek UNHCR support and intervention with regional police and immigration authorities in this attempt to crack down on trafficking and smuggling syndicates. Regarding the question about the 2 human rights commissions who are not in attendance today, it's very encouraging to hear from Peter and the Malawi Human Rights Commission that there are initiatives underway to seek discussions with the view of finding solutions with both of those human rights commissions. But it would also be useful for civil society and also the media to be reaching out to both the South African and the Ethiopian human rights commissions and presenting them with the evidence from the research and the documentary, but also seeing if we can have conversations with them and asking to collaborate with them on this situation. Primarily, this is a question for peace and immigration ministers at the SADC level, Southern Africa Development Community, and East Africa Community level to deal with. Being a regional issue, and regional as in Southern Africa, that would seem to me to be the most logical place to deal with this issue. There is, however, little cooperation between states on these movements. Transit states do not remain overly concerned, as they are aware that these groups of people are not intending to remain for long periods of time. There is therefore little incentive to act to prevent arrivals in countries like Malawi. It is possible that they don't see this as a serious regional issue, and it may be useful to lobby Malawi to try to get this issue onto the SADC and the East African Community agenda for further discussion and planning. One suggestion which came to my mind on this issue, which may be useful, is for the governments, but also for the human rights commissions and all 3 human rights commissions to liaise with the police chiefs subcommittee. So it's a group known as the Southern Africa Regional Police Chiefs Cooperation Organization, which sits within SADC. And this group is principally responsible for the prevention and combating of cross-border and transnational organized crime. And because it is part of SADC, it has a lot more access to information and possibilities to work in a cross-border way with different immigration and police officers from various countries. And Part of its mandate is to deal with a wide range of issues, including trafficking in persons. According to the UNODC, the UN Office dealing with drugs and crime, globally, most trafficking is national or regional and carried out by people whose nationality is often the same as that of the victims. In a 2014 UNODC report, they found that trafficking in persons everywhere usually involves domestic offenders with limited geographical reach. They also found that women are significantly involved in trafficking in persons, both as victims but also as offenders. We've seen from the report and from the documentary that Ethiopians appear to make up the majority of people being smuggled into South Africa from the Horn. The flows appear to be very complex, with economic migrants traveling alongside refugees and people seeking asylum. Most refugees are Somalis, although Ethiopians also tend to apply for asylum on arrival in South Africa. The evidence suggests that significant human rights violations take place along the route, and once within South Africa, both migrants and refugees commonly face violence, prejudice, discrimination, and abuse. It appears that the migrant smuggling along the southern route has become more violent and exploitative, with kidnapping or holding people for ransom by smugglers. That is becoming much more common than it was previously. IOM did a study in 2009, which is quite dated now, which in that study, it said no migrants reported being held for ransom, except by police and prison officials in certain cases. What we're now seeing is that kidnapping and ransom demands seem to have become more prevalent and almost normalized. And we've not seen this kind of situation in the southern route previously. It has been, however, quite visible in the eastern route towards Yemen and Saudi Arabia. There is some evidence also that the smuggling economy has begun to attract more organized criminals. Smugglers sometimes enjoy impunity from prosecution because, despite national laws against smuggling and trafficking in many of the countries in which they operate. And we've seen from the report and the documentary that governments and security officials are often involved directly and indirectly in the trade, in the trafficking and smuggling trades. A greater coordination and sharing of information between the police and immigration authorities of the various countries along the southern route would be very helpful. If the data on the numbers as well as the countries of origin and the reasons for movements were more readily available, solutions could be more easily found through the coordinated effort of multiple countries. And as I've said before, a logical place to be able to deal with these issues in a cross-border fashion would be at the SADC level or at the East Africa Community level.
Wow. Thank you so much. I mean, there is a lot of meat in what you just said. I never knew that there was a coordination of police in the region that, talk about these matters. But when you said that, my question was if the Malawi police top leaders are part of the problem, will it be easy for South Africa, let's say South Africa, to get access to Malawi and do all the investigations? Like that may not work. And I saw someone, in the comments say that we must not alienate Kenya, because from Ethiopia, they're in Kenya. From Kenya, they go to Tanzania. From Tanzania, Malawi, and that's, the main base. And then they transit through Mozambique and Zimbabwe. So there is a lot to be done. But I believe when there is a willingness from the leaders, this can be done. As I said earlier, this is a topic that is close to my heart because I had to run Malawi. I love Malawi, but I had to run away from Malawi because of what I was doing to document and follow up and just make sure that we know what they're doing and how they're doing it, where they're hiding, who they are. And my life was at risk. And so when I don't see collaboration, it really hurts. But we can't give up. This is a calling. And the third question to you, Peter, is just an advice, for us civil society organizations like Inua Advocacy and, committed journalists like Golden what can we do to help drive the progress toward ending this human trafficking in Dzaleka and Malawi as a whole? Is there anything else that we can do to give you what you need to take action, you as government institution? Over to you.
Well, I think we are dealing with a complex issue that also concerns a number of key stakeholders, both from the civil society, constitutional bodies, and then relevant government departments. From what has so far been shared and presented, I would think that the way out now is to actually ensure that we bring this on the national agenda. We should actually popularize the findings of this documentary and the investigation that has taken place, so that we should then seek concrete steps or concrete actions for those directly responsible. In other words, my view is that when we do a proper stakeholders analysis and their roles into this matter, because we have enough information, but the question is, what next? It might be slightly pleasing to note that maybe from what was exposed, some actions have already been taken, but we should also be mindful of the fact that after the exposure, those involved have changed their strategies. They are doing things differently. In other words, we don't have to take a break and say, wow, this is enough, this is what we wanted to know, because things keep changing. But for me, primarily, is to actually, once we have this analysis and the engagement with key stakeholders, we should be able to say, okay, from what has so far been exposed, Malawi Police Service, what practical steps are you going to take on this issue? Malawi Human Rights Commission, what practical steps are you going to take on this issue? Malawi Defense Force, what practical steps are you going to do on this issue? And for me, the starting point is where we can use the civic space. I would call upon Inua as well as other stakeholders to kind of organize relevant stakeholders in the form of a national dialogue on this matter. Let us sit and let people like Gordon and others make a detailed presentation on some of these issues. And then from there, we can have some national consensus on how, as a country, we need to do this. Some responses are already what other stakeholders like MHRC are doing at the regional level. And I'm really looking forward to this. And we have already extended invitations to our colleagues in the region. Like I said earlier on, in Zimbabwe, South Africa, Zambia, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, DRC, and so on and so forth. And we will not only work with the national human rights institutions. Our plan is also to involve other national level stakeholders, including members of the civil society. So they will also be part of that meeting. Although the meeting primarily focuses on migration in general, I think that it will also be an opportunity to specifically zero in on the issue of human trafficking. Thank you, and over.
Peter, what you just said is really incredible. And the advice to have a national dialogue on this, and then people volunteering or distributing tasks. I think this is a brilliant idea that we need to take up and implement. And I believe there are many donors who are listening here, and we'll be knocking at your doors to see how you can support. But also, I believe to start with a national dialogue, then do regional dialogue. I think that will be more effective. No, thank you so much. That was really, really encouraging. Let me go back to you, Kajol. I know that, there is a lot of complex in this matter, and we have really talked about what can be done locally, what can be done regionally, but for some reason, if the local responsible authorities fail to take action, what other options do human rights organizations have to pursue justice and put an end to this, human trafficking? Like, is there anything, if no authorities locally take action, is there anywhere else we can escalate the matter?
Thank you, Innocent. So you've said it, tackling these violations are primarily tasks for the police and immigration officials. If those people and those organizations are not dealing with it, it becomes extremely difficult. There are things that human rights organizations can do, civil society organizations, media, and so forth. In preparation, I had brainstormed and made a list of what would be the useful kinds of things to do. And these are not all of these things are things for civil society. Some are also for government, but I'll run through them and then, you can decide what is useful. So one thing which I thought might be useful is a regular audit of data from border posts to see which people regularly travel through these border posts, and having the same group of people regularly transiting through border posts may indicate the presence of some kind of organized crime happening there. Of course, I'm very much aware that not everybody does travel through official border posts and travel irregularly through gaps in borders and so forth, but this may be a useful process. Irregular movements will continue to take place regardless of whether laws and policies permit that regular movement, or new barriers will be created. It's also important to stress at this point that refugees must be allowed to cross international borders to seek protection. So managing and policing this process becomes very difficult and complicated when there are some people who are obliged to be allowed to pass through. There needs to be respect for international laws and primarily the Refugee Convention in this respect. Very little can happen if local authorities fail to take action. Local immigration laws are being violated, and this requires a response from those countries whose laws are being violated. The report and the documentary point to the involvement of politicians and government officials. These issues need to be brought up during election campaigning periods to ensure that these same politicians do not continue to be eligible for public office. It would be useful for criminal cases to be brought against the politicians. In respect of government officials, complaints must be lodged against these persons where there is sufficient evidence of their wrongdoing. I would also suggest lifestyle audits for government officials and politicians. These should be more encouraged across all of our countries to ensure that individuals are not spending more money than they earn in their official jobs. Police officials refusing to open cases also point to corruption and possibly collusion. These situations should result in complaints and investigations of those officials and of those police stations. For criminal cases that are proceeding, and I see that there were cases referred to, it would be useful for a trial monitoring process to take place by law associations, bar associations, law societies, including regular trial monitoring reports to be made publicly available or even published in media and newspapers so that this information is accessible to people. I would also recommend a regular monitoring of places of detention, particularly immigration detention, but also including refugee camps, prisons, police stations, monitoring for abuses, but also to ensure that conditions in those places remain above board. It would be useful to draw in academic institutions to carry out research studies so that reliable current data is available to be able to engage with authorities, government authorities. I know that Golden and his organization are already involved and have put out really good pieces, but it would be good to get more media involved in the situation to raise the profile of these crimes and the human rights violations that are being committed. And one thing which I thought would be useful in this context is for civil society organization, human rights defenders, even media organizations to submit shadow reports to UN bodies. For example, with the Universal Periodic Review of each country, which takes place every few years, the UN Human Rights Committee will engage with states and make recommendations to states, which they then must report their progress on. So if, for example, concerns were raised about Malawi's non-action on trafficking and smuggling, these concerns will be raised and Malawi will then need to respond at the UN level on the steps they're taking to clamp down on this. Thanks, Innocent. I will stop there.
Wow, I was enjoying listening and taking notes. Really impressive information there. And I'm sure after this meeting, we'll digest and see what can be done now and what can be done later. But this is really, it's calling for a huge collaboration, and it's possible. No, thank you so much. So for now, we'll take a break from firing questions to our panelists, and we'll turn to the chats for those who have raised questions or concerns. Let me ask my colleague Brenda to read the questions, but also the comments that are in the chat box for those who have been able to submit them, so that our panelists can also respond directly to the questions of our audience. Over to you, Brenda.
So there's a comment from Abdi Karim Ismail. He says, human trafficking has become new business industry with vast amount of wealth, which is quite difficult to stop with the current economic crisis faced by the world, especially in East and Southern Africa. However, you need also to talk to the countries and governments whose people are being smuggled to stop their people. As refugees, I think Mr. Ishmael is from Dzaleka. He says, as refugees, we are vulnerable to the human traffickers, and when the Malawi Defense Force raids in the camp, it affects us physically and emotionally. Is there underground road between Songwe border to Dzaleka, or are they using helicopters? It does not make sense, because from Songwe to Dzaleka, there are quite an uncountable number of roadblocks with different authorities. Why MDF raid in the camp? Why not catching them along the roadblock? I think this is just a concerned Dzaleka resident looking at the vice that is taking place. And then we have a question from Zororai Nkomo to everyone. He says, his question is directed to the journalists who did the investigative story on PIJ. He says what he's seeing here on the documentary is more of a smuggling rather than trafficking. So his question is that have they managed to speak to the victims? And if so, were the victims forced, were they coerced, or were they misled to go where they were taken? He says the reason he's asking this question is for them to have a clear and correct conceptualization of the crime of human trafficking, which is different from smuggling, although there is intersectionality. I think there's another question from a journalist, Mphatso Mwamvani. He's asking a question to Gordon. He says, during your investigation into the trafficking networks, were there any attempts by state or non-state actors to obstruct your work or discredit your findings? And if so, how did you navigate those threats and ensure the integrity of the investigation? So far, those are the questions, and I think when we get more, we'll be able to continue with the asking. So I think there's questions to Gordon mostly, and then there's that other question on whether we're able to differentiate between smuggling and trafficking.
Thank you so much. I mean, I share the concern with Ishmael, the leader from Dzaleka, who says, you know, from the border to Lilongwe, it's a long way, and there are so many police checks. Are these people using curbs or they go through helicopters? That shows the level of caution. But also, even when the Malawi Defense Force raided Dzaleka, they were not going to arrest traffickers. They were acting on behalf of the chief traffickers in a way to silence the rivals. So it's a lot to take. But anyway, let us, you know, invite Golden to answer these two questions, whether there were cases, because what our audience talked about is they see more of smuggling rather than trafficking, but also was there any opposition from government to obstruct your findings? And if so, how did you navigate that? Over to you, Gordon.
Thank you so much for the questions and all the comments in the chat. To begin with the first question, whether we were able to meet the trafficked or the smuggled during the investigation. Unfortunately, we were not able to find any people who were being trafficked during the investigation. We relied most on testimonies of colleagues. There are a few civil society organizations that have had access to some who have been arrested and have been detained in prisons. So we were able to speak to prison officers, civil society colleagues who have had access to them, and to be able to try to understand their stories a little bit better about where they're coming from and where they're going. We hope maybe in the future we can be able to find some people who have been involved and being able to interview them. But in this case, we are unfortunately not able to speak to them. I do entirely agree that the overall impression is that these were mostly human smugglers, not human traffickers. In terms of any obstacles that during the investigation, we never really came under received any threats, whether legal or physical, during the investigation. But we are very aware that we are dealing with a very sensitive area, and security was very paramount to us. We traveled to remote parts of the country where the smugglers use routes to revisit the routes that the smugglers use. We visited safe houses they use. So we are very cautious of the fact that our physical well-being was under constant threat throughout the investigation. We were exposing very powerful people. We were exposing people who are the friends and allies in the military and other uniformed services. So that's a constant reminder that you can be taken out anytime if someone you are reporting on doesn't want the investigation to come out. But fortunately, during the investigation and after the investigation was launched, we never received any threats, both legal or physical. So we are glad that we have been able to report on it and be able to talk about it. One positive thing which I wanted to share that I didn't mention earlier on about the impact of the investigation is that we received the communication from the South African police, the Special Crimes Unit, the Hawks. They requested us to collaborate with them to help them with their own investigation, which is also looking at trying to dismantle this trafficking ring from South Africa. But they have found links with Malawi ring. So for us, that was at least heartwarming to see that our work was not all in vain. While no Malawi police officer called us to find out more about it, but at least in distant land, someone noted our work, and we are glad that the Hawks are looking into dismantling this network from the South African end. So at least we see that there has been some impact by the work that we have done. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. But also let me quickly, because of the time, let me just explain one possibility of how the human trafficking and human smuggling works in this particular situation. So you have most of them, they come as through, the human smuggling. But then there are ways where the smugglers or traffickers, they play each other. So they buy people from each other. For example, you have someone who is getting people like 50 people from Ethiopia. The moment they get to Kenya, the traffickers in Dzaleka, they call them and say, hey, how many people are you assigning to me? So each smuggler or trafficker is assigned a number of people. So smuggler A is able to buy or influence the numbers. That if he was assigned 20 people, he may want 50. And therefore, he will pay money to those who are transporting them to say, assign me a large number. And so if they got more people from smuggler or trafficker B, the number B is able to influence the transportation to be arrested by police or immigration. So he can speak to immigration to say, hey, there are people who are coming, can you arrest them? And when they are arrested, he goes to the police or immigration and pays money to get everyone released, pretending that those people who are released are going back to Ethiopia. But they are given to smuggler B. Now, when smuggler B has acquired everyone, they have to put a price because they paid a lot of money to get people from the immigration or police, and therefore they will require a lot of money from the families of the ones that they have arrested or they have been assigned. And during the waiting in Dzaleka, they are beaten, they are tortured to be able to tell their family members to give money, otherwise they'll be killed. And there are people who have been killed in the process and they're buried at unmarked graves. So it can start as smuggling and end up in a trafficking way. So it's quite critical, and yeah. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I see that our time is over, but I want to ask once again our panelists, if our audience would go with one word from you, what do you want them to know about this conversation? Let's start with you, Gordon.
One important thing that we all can do is to look at ourselves and say, from where we stand, what can we do to be able to support the fight against the human smugglers? We have a voice, all of us, we have a voice that can be raised to ensure that we provide critical work. If you are in an institution, we can be able to use our institutions to be able to support this work. So that's the call that I would like to make, that we all should look into ourselves and see what role can we play to be able to fight this vice.
Thank you. Peter?
I just would like to encourage Inoa to keep the game up. I think these meetings, I find them very useful. The agenda that we have today is a very serious one, and it calls for concerted effort from all of us. So we have a commitment from the Human Rights Commission. We are ready to work with all partners to actually address this vice so that it is stopped completely. Thank you.
Thank you. Kajol?
What's important for us to do is to put pressure on police and immigration to try and combat this very serious human rights violation and crimes which are occurring in our countries, if we don't put that pressure on those groups, they will not be forced to act to try and combat and control smuggling and trafficking.
Wonderful. Thank you so much once again for our speakers, for really making yourselves available and being ready to answer these questions. And we are really grateful, and we believe that this conversation will not end here. And thank you to all our audience. We had a lot of people interested in this conversation, and I believe the recording will be shared as well. And this is really great. So for those who want to continue following more of our programs next month. So this is a series of Zoom conversations, various topics affecting refugees in Malawi especially. And so next meeting will be on August 28th, and it will be talking about the role of journalism to support refugees. How does journalism support refugees? This is a perfect answer, and one of the good examples of how journalism can highlight things. So we want to challenge journalists in Malawi to do more in stories that can make lives of vulnerable change. Once again, thank you so much, and continue to do good things for the most vulnerable. Bye-bye.